In a world perpetually scarred by conflicts fought over territorial claims, where borders are fiercely defended and land is deemed the ultimate prize, one particular stretch of desert defies all logic. Imagine a place, roughly the size of a small nation, sitting unclaimed, unwanted by any sovereign state. This is Bir Tawil, a 2,060 square kilometer wedge of arid terrain nestled between Egypt and Sudan. For over a century, these two nations have engaged in a unique, almost comical, tug-of-war, not to claim this territory, but rather to force it upon each other. "It's yours," one declares. "No, it's definitely yours," retorts the other. Why would any nation reject such a substantial piece of land? To understand this bizarre geopolitical dance, we must first grasp the nature of Bir Tawil itself. Picture an inhospitable expanse of rock and sand, utterly devoid of permanent human habitation. It's a place where life struggles to take root, a landscape defined by its harshness and remoteness. There are no known natural resources of value here, no oil, no precious minerals, no fertile ground for agriculture. It offers no strategic advantage, no access to vital waterways. In essence, it is nothing but a barren, landlocked desert, a stark contrast to the coveted territories that typically fuel international disputes. Its very emptiness is central to its predicament. The roots of Bir Tawil's peculiar status stretch back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a time when the British Empire was busy redrawing the map of Africa. Colonial powers, with little regard for local realities or future consequences, carved out territories and defined boundaries, often with arbitrary lines on paper. This era of imperial cartography created many enduring complexities across the continent, and the border region between what would become Egypt and Sudan was no exception. It was here, in the vast, remote northeast of Africa, that two distinct, yet contradictory, boundary lines were drawn, setting the stage for a century of diplomatic deadlock over a piece of land no one wants. The first significant demarcation came with the Anglo-Egyptian Condominium Agreement of 1899. This treaty established the political boundary between Egypt and what was then Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. For simplicity and clarity, the British decided to draw a straight line along the 22nd parallel of latitude. This neat, clean line had immediate implications for the region. Under this 1899 agreement, both the strategically important Hala'ib triangle to the east and the desolate Bir Tawil region to the west were placed squarely within Egyptian territory. At this point, the future of these lands seemed clear, with Egypt holding claim to both. But this simplicity was soon to be complicated by a pragmatic, yet ultimately problematic, administrative decision. Just 3 years later, in 1902, the British introduced a second, entirely different boundary. This new line wasn't political, it was administrative, drawn to facilitate the effective governance of nomadic tribes whose traditional grazing lands often straddled the 22nd parallel. Recognizing that some tribes historically associated with Sudan roamed north of the 22nd parallel, and vice versa, the British adjusted the border to reflect these local realities. Crucially, this 1902 administrative boundary placed the Hala'ib triangle under Sudanese administration, due to the nomadic Beja people. In return, the much less significant Bir Tawil was placed under Egyptian administration. This well-intentioned adjustment, however, laid the groundwork for the modern dilemma. And so, the stage was set for a unique international predicament. The British, in their effort to govern diverse regions, had left behind two conflicting, superimposed border lines. The 1899 political boundary, a straight line along the 22nd parallel, placed both Hala'ib and Bir Tawil in Egypt. The 1902 administrative boundary, drawn with more fluidity to accommodate local tribes, placed Hala'ib in Sudan and Bir Tawil in Egypt. These two distinct lines crisscrossed in such a way that it created a paradoxical choice for any future claimant. To accept one boundary meant rejecting the other, and with it, accepting or rejecting an entirely different piece of territory. This cartographic knot would unravel into a bizarre stalemate. To grasp why Bir Tawil remains unwanted, we must turn our attention to its much larger, more appealing neighbor, the Hala'ib Triangle. Located directly on the Red Sea coast, this territory is significantly larger than Bir Tawil, sprawling over approximately 20,580 square kilometers. But size isn't its only virtue. Unlike Bir Tawil, the Hala'ib Triangle boasts immense strategic and economic value. Its coastal access is a gateway to crucial shipping lanes and offers valuable fishing grounds. More importantly, the region is believed to hold significant potential for oil and natural gas reserves, as well as other valuable mineral deposits. This is the land worth fighting for. The contrast between Hala'ib and Bir Tawil couldn't be starker. While Bir Tawil is empty, Hala'ib is home to a significant population, notably the nomadic Beja people, who have lived and grazed their livestock in the area for centuries. This human element further complicates any claim. But beyond its people, Hala'ib's potential wealth lies beneath its surface and along its shores. The Red Sea coastline provides critical maritime access, fishing rights, and a potential base for naval operations. Reports and geological surveys hint at vast, untapped reserves of oil and natural gas, along with deposits of other valuable minerals. These are the tangible benefits that make Hala'ib a fiercely contested prize. Now, let's revisit Bir Tawil. Completely landlocked, surrounded by arid desert, it sits hundreds of kilometers from any meaningful infrastructure or natural feature that could lend it value. There are no rivers, no significant oases, no strategic highlands. Its geology shows no promise of exploitable resources, and its harsh climate means it can sustain no permanent settlements. In the ruthless calculus of international geopolitics, Bir Tawil offers absolutely nothing of interest. It is a geographic anomaly, a blank slate that the world has chosen to ignore, precisely because its neighbor is so appealing. This stark disparity in value is the linchpin of the entire Bir Tawil paradox. Let's analyze Egypt's position. Cairo's consistent stance is to claim the 1899 Anglo-Egyptian Condominium Agreement's boundary, the straight line of the 22nd parallel, as the legitimate international border. By asserting this historical political line, Egypt firmly places the entire Hala'ib Triangle within its national territory. This claim is driven by Hala'ib's invaluable access to the Red Sea, its potential for energy resources, and its established population. From an Egyptian perspective, asserting the 1899 border is a strategic imperative, cementing its control over a vital coastal region crucial for its economic and security interests. But this claim comes with a significant and unwanted attached parcel of land. Here lies the crux of the Bir Tawil paradox for Egypt. If Egypt claims the 1899 boundary to secure Hala'ib, it simultaneously must acknowledge that the very same 1899 boundary places Bir Tawil firmly within Sudan's territory. To claim Bir Tawil, Egypt would have to switch to the 1902 administrative boundary. But adopting the 1902 boundary would mean surrendering its claim to Hala'ib, the land it desperately wants. Therefore, Egypt actively refuses to claim Bir Tawil. For Cairo, the barren, landlocked desert is a geopolitical liability, a package deal that would force them to relinquish the far more valuable Hala'ib Triangle. It's a classic case of sacrificing the trivial for the essential. Across the contested border, Sudan's position mirrors Egypt's, but in reverse. Khartoum argues for the validity of the 1902 administrative boundary. This claim is equally strategic, as adopting the 1902 line places the valuable Hala'ib Triangle squarely within Sudanese territory. Sudan, much like Egypt, covets Hala'ib's coastal access, its potential resources, and its historical ties to the Beja people who, under the 1902 arrangement, fell under Sudanese administration. From Sudan's perspective, the 1902 boundary represents a more accurate reflection of historical and tribal links, making it the legitimate claim for sovereignty over Hala'ib. Their claim is just as steadfast as Egypt's. And so, Sudan finds itself in the exact same predicament as Egypt, just from a different angle. By insisting on the 1902 administrative boundary to gain Hala'ib, Sudan automatically acknowledges that the very same 1902 boundary places Bir Tawil within Egyptian territory. To claim Bir Tawil, Sudan would have to accept the 1899 political boundary. But accepting the 1899 boundary would mean abandoning its claim to the vital Hala'ib triangle. Therefore, Sudan, like Egypt, steadfastly refuses to claim Bir Tawil. It's a lose-lose proposition if they were to accept the barren land, as it would mean forfeiting the far more significant prize. The cycle of mutual rejection is complete. This creates the extraordinary stalemate: Egypt wants Hala'ib and therefore rejects Bir Tawil, pushing it onto Sudan. Sudan wants Hala'ib and therefore rejects Bir Tawil, pushing it back onto Egypt. The situation is a perfect diplomatic deadlock, a reverse tug-of-war where both sides are desperately trying to lose a piece of land. No country will claim Bir Tawil because to do so would implicitly validate the border definition that costs them the much larger, more valuable Hala'ib triangle. The geopolitical calculus is simple: Bir Tawil is a poison chalice, accepting it means losing the true prize. It is a territory caught in a legal limbo, a testament to conflicting maps and strategic priorities. While Bir Tawil remains an unclaimed wasteland, the fate of the Hala'ib triangle is a different story. For decades, Egypt has exercised de facto control over the Hala'ib triangle. It administers the region as part of its Red Sea Governorate, establishing government services, infrastructure, and a visible military presence. Egyptian maps consistently show Hala'ib as part of Egypt. Sudan, however, has never formally relinquished its claim, and Sudanese maps frequently depict Hala'ib as part of its territory. This creates an interesting legal and political duality, where one nation maintains physical control, while the other maintains its historical and legal claim, refusing to acknowledge the occupation. The heart of the Bir Tawil paradox lies in the overwhelming disparity in value between the two territories. On one side, Hala'ib, a vast coastal region rich with potential resources and strategic importance. On the other, Bir Tawil, a smaller, landlocked, barren desert. Neither Egypt nor Sudan is willing to trade the genuine assets of Hala'ib for the utter liabilities of Bir Tawil. It's a simple cost-benefit analysis played out on a geopolitical scale. The price of claiming Bir Tawil is simply too high for either nation, as it means conceding the much-desired Hala'ib. This imbalance is the constant, unspoken reason for Bir Tawil's continued and unique unclaimed status. Lost in this high-stakes diplomatic game are the Beja people, the nomadic tribes who have historically inhabited the Hala'ib triangle. Their lives and livelihoods have been directly affected by the shifting administrative controls and the ongoing dispute. They are the human face of a border drawn by distant colonial powers and contested by modern nations. In stark contrast, Bir Tawil, being uninhabited, has no such human story. Its emptiness means no population suffers the consequences of its unclaimed status, further underscoring its insignificance in the eyes of the nations vying for regional dominance. The Beja are a reminder of the real-world impact of these lines on maps. More than a century after the conflicting borders were drawn, Bir Tawil remains an anomaly. It is arguably the last truly unclaimed, significant landmass on Earth. While adventurers and micronation enthusiasts have tried to plant flags or declare personal kingdoms there, their efforts hold no international legal standing. The political and administrative frameworks put in place by the British Empire have created a self-perpetuating stalemate, one that neither Egypt nor Sudan has any incentive to break. The desert silence of Bir Tawil echoes with the absurd logic of geopolitics, a barren symbol of what happens when the desire for a strategic prize outweighs any interest in a desolate counterpart. Bir Tawil stands as a stark reminder of the complex and often irrational consequences of colonial mapmaking. In a world where every inch of territory is usually fiercely contested, its fate is uniquely ironic. It highlights the profound power of arbitrary lines on a map, not just to define nations, but also to create vacuums. For Egypt and Sudan, the battle over Hala'ib is a very real, very strategic one. But for Bir Tawil, the desolate, unwanted land, its status as the world's only unclaimed territory is a direct, enduring consequence of that battle, a land forever trapped between two claims, because neither nation is willing to pay the price of accepting it.